Hi guys, this is American Thinks. Just finished what I like to think of as a scathing critique of 33 things Americans should know about Canada, something along those lines. And I figured it was only fair if I came back and made a video about what an American thinks about Canada. And I did this once before with Australia. And of course, everybody's now going to say that I only do Anglosphere countries, but you know, this is just the way that it's worked out. And probably next time if I do this again, I'll try to get another country outside the Anglosphere just for variety. But anyways, let's get to it. I have a few points. Number one, I think Canada, actually, by far, Canada is probably the country that I've been to where it was the easiest to make friends. For whatever reason, I mean, I think it goes beyond, just the, Canadian thing of being polite and whatnot. I mean, like, when I was going to school up there, I went to school there for 2 years, and I just made incredible friends. And it was incredibly easy. I found in America, I mean, I have lots of friends in America too, obviously, but in America, it's a lot easier to find people that are really flaky. You make plans and people flake out at the last minute. In Canada, it was almost like the opposite. Um, I was going to school up there. If you're trying to get a group of people together to go watch a movie or something like that, it's like people pile on, and it's easy to get a group of people to do basically whatever. People are just genuinely interested, and they're up for whatever. And it was, I mean, very many good friends up there, and very easily in a short amount of time. I mean, I was only there for 2 years, so very very friendly, and I have tremendous good friends and good memories from being up there, and I can't otherwise explain it otherwise than that they're very friendly people. Number two, unfortunately, this is going to sound very stereotypical, but when I think of Canada, I think about hockey because we just played out there so much, easily more than any other sport, probably as much as all the other sports put together. Um, and this is coming from, I grew up in Minnesota, and so I grew up playing hockey. And I didn't really have much of a choice. I grew up playing hockey, and so I thought I was pretty good at hockey when I went to go to school up in Canada. But they just take it to a whole different level, and it's easy to see. I mean, you can go like usually for ice time before we'd get ice time at the local arena. There was like a little kids league. I mean, like really little kids. These little guys could barely walk, and their parents are putting them on skates, and they're going flopping around the ice trying to chase after this puck, and it was really funny to watch. And there'd always be like one or two little kids who would develop faster, than the other ones, and they were skating circles around the other ones, and it would be really funny because if the puck would go up against the boards, and several kids would go after it, and they'd bump into each other, and then they'd all fall down. I mean, it's really comical to watch, but they really do start at a very early age, and they take it very seriously. I mean, if you play, it's very different than playing scholastic hockey in the United States, because when you play in Canada, it's everyone you're playing with thinks that they're in the NHL or they're trying to get in the NHL, and they take it very seriously. Lots of fights, plenty of good fights, and that's just the nature of Canadian hockey. And we played. Gosh, I remember waking up at like 5:30 in the mornings to go play for a few hours before classes started. So it was a good time. It was a lot of fun, but definitely very intense. Old time hockey. Um, and I would say, on top of that, just sports in general. At least where I was in Alberta. It was very sports oriented. Just about any sport, Canadians like to be competitive, and I guess it's kind of the opposite, really, of their supposedly, polite stereotype. Canadians are polite until they start playing sports, and then it's a completely different story. Um, Definitely very competitive, very good sport, and they love to beat Americans. If you're an American playing sports in Canada, uh, buckle up because you're going to get some runs taken at you. There's, not really anything you're going to do about it. They just love beating Americans if and when they can. There's like some hidden point system that we don't know about where you get points if you can beat an American at something. So, anyways, definitely very sports oriented culture. The next thing would probably be outdoors. I enjoy doing all sorts of outdoor stuff from camping, backpacking, fishing, you know, pretty much you name it, snowboarding. Uh, I guess let me say it like this. When I was growing up in Minnesota, Minnesota has a lot of cool outdoor stuff to do. But all of my friends growing up in Minnesota always thought that Colorado was like the gold standard for outdoor stuff. And everyone would always take these trips to Colorado for camping or for, snowboarding, obviously, or skiing, whichever one you're into. And it was just like, oh, Colorado's amazing. Colorado's this, Colorado's that. Now that I've actually lived here for quite a while now, everybody who lives in Colorado that's into outdoor stuff, they're very big on Utah. And it's easy to understand because in Colorado there's a tremendous amount of opportunity here, but there's also like 5 million people that live here, and they all live like right up next to the mountains. And every weekend, and especially on holiday weekends and so forth, everybody piles into the mountains, and every place is crowded, and there's no way to really get away from it. And then plus you pile the tourists on top of that who come here for vacations because Colorado's great to visit as well. It's just everywhere is crowded. There's not really a great place if you just want to get away from it all, unless you go to a different state. And I think that people in North America generally, if you're really into outdoor stuff, Canada pretty much takes the cake as far as that's concerned. And for that reason, because there's so much, wilderness out there, and there's not a lot of people that live there, relative to the United States. So if you want a place to get away from it all, there's no place like Canada to go, and it's just phenomenal. It's like amazing scenery after amazing scenery after amazing scenery, especially when I was in Alberta, so there's a lot of options there. You go to BC, and there's a lot of options there too. It's just, it's tremendous. And there's nothing, I mean, you could say Alaska, sure, Alaska, part of the United States. Alaska's kind of its own animal. Really, it's kind of on a different level. I guess what I'm comparing it to is the lower 48. And in that sense, Canada, there's just nothing like it that you can get to in America, except for some very special places in America. But anyways, I guess the next thing I would think of is how multicultural it is, and I think this is I guess relative to the history of the country, it's a somewhat recent phenomenon. But I didn't realize, even all the times I visited Canada before going to school up there, I didn't realize how multicultural it was. And especially if you go to Toronto or some of the major metropolitan areas, Vancouver over on the West Coast, just tremendously multicultural. And for as small of a country as it is population-wise, it's really cool. It's really cool. You get to meet a lot of interesting people from a lot of interesting places. And it gives Canada a very unique flavor that, frankly, some places in the United States don't have. Well, not quite to the same extent. And finally, I would say the average. It's hard to say this. If you compared an average Canadian to an average American, I don't know how you would even define that. But my impression is of Canadians that, despite the Canadian government offering a much wider variety of socialized services than the American government does, most Canadians, I would say, have a greater sense of self-sufficiency than Americans do. And I think it's just the nature of the country being as large as it is, and with as low of a population as it has. A lot of places in Canada, your nearest neighbor may be some distance away. There's pretty much always going to be snow wherever you are. You're going to have to deal with snow, stuff like that. You're just going to have to assume a greater level of responsibility for yourself in order to live in Canada. With a few exceptions, obviously, Toronto, a big one I think of, is kind of a huge nanny state. But from where I was in Alberta, where I spent most of my time up there, I think that's generally true. Whereas in America, United States, I should say, most people tend to live in fairly big cities. A lot of places don't, get very severe weather. And it's easy to not take on that same level of responsibility, self-sufficiency, and so forth. So, just a few thoughts. I have a lot more thoughts, a lot more experiences, but I wanted to keep this a relatively short video. In general, I'm a huge fan of Canada. If I couldn't live in the United States for whatever reason, Canada would be my next choice of places to live. And fantastic people. And I greatly enjoyed my time there. I also highly recommend it if you're looking for a place to visit, especially if you're into camping or kayaking, whatnot. You definitely need to start looking into it. All right, Thanks, guys. If you have any places you'd like me to give my thoughts on, put it in the comments. I don't, like I said, I don't do these really that often, but every once in a while, I feel interested in doing it. So I might give your country a look for the next